Kyren Williams is going to be doing what? And the Rams released their 53-man roster, and we have our big takeaways. That's coming up next on Locked On Rams.
You are Locked On Rams, your daily Los Angeles Rams podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, Ramley, and welcome to another episode of Locked On Rams, your daily podcast covering your Los Angeles Rams, free and available wherever you get your podcasts. Locked On Rams, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We're also available over on YouTube, so if you haven't yet, do us a huge favor, join the party, hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell, hit that like button. Getting so close to 14,000 subs. Can't thank you guys enough. My name is Doug McCain. You can follow me on X and Instagram at DMAC_LA. I've been covering LA sports for over a decade. Bleacher Report, Dodgers Nation, 24/7 Sports, SI. Now the Rams for Locked On. And as always, I'm joined by the Rams pre-half and post-game show host for the Rams flagship radio station, ESPN 710 LA. He's entered his 9th season covering your Los Angeles Rams, the People's Champ, Mr. Travis Rogers. You can follow him on X at Travis Rogers. And on today's episode, we are breaking down the Rams 53-man roster. What are our big takeaways from the names on that list? Any surprises? We'll get into that. And also, yesterday, a little curveball, we learned that Kyren Williams will be returning punts for the Rams this season. But first, today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Download Gametime today. What time is it? Game time. Oh, I like that read. Little 96 Bulls, little MJ Bulls in there. But we got a lot to get into, Travis. Yesterday, we did a little Locked On After Dark, a little emergency episode reacting to the Rams trading Ernest Jones to the Titans. So if you want to see a full breakdown of that trade, just go back to the feed, go on our YouTube channel to find that. But we got the 53-man roster yesterday. But then we also got a curveball very late, and that was from Jordan Rodrigue of The Athletic, the great Jordan Rodrigue. She tweeted out that Kyren told her that he will be returning punts for the Rams this season. So first thing that popped into my head was, oh, what? Kyren Williams, the injuries, the workload. Do you really want to put this on him? And then I'll remind myself that, wait, what he really meant to tell her was, I am going to be calling fair catches this season. So that reminded me a couple years ago, we saw Cooper Kupp in the same role. You don't want to risk any punt returns, any type of fumbles, turnovers there. So we'll see what this means, but I think it's going to be a lot of fair catches for Kyren.
I'm completely flummoxed by this. I have no idea what this means. I don't like it. I know that. If you're just going to fair catch punts, why him? There are, if you're literally not going to return them, why him? You could put Cooper Kupp, Puka Nacua. You could put Demarcus Robinson. Take your pick. There's literally no one you couldn't put back there if you're just going to fair catch punts. So I don't think that's what the plan is. Otherwise, I think you'd be using someone else. That's number one. Number two is, what in the world are they thinking? Like this, put this right next to the Ernest Jones thing. I don't understand. I just really, truly don't understand this. What's the first thing you think of when you think of Kyren Williams? Injuries. He can't stay on the field. He's a great player. I mean, he's a dynamic running back that when he's out there, he's played really well. He missed virtually his entire first season in the league with injuries. He missed about a third of the season last year with injuries. And you're going to put him in a situation where he's going to take additional shots? I just don't understand it. Now, you must really like Blake Corum if you're thinking about it like that, but I was really surprised. And, again, I keep coming back to this. Sean McVay knows what he's doing. Sean McVay is one of the best coaches in the NFL. I'm assuming that they have a methodology to land at this decision, but I'm really struggling to see how taking a guy who has not completed a full NFL season and putting him in more plays, more contact, special teams context is a way to keep him healthier. I just don't understand it.
Yeah, you bring up Blake Corum. That's another thing that popped into my head was, well, they really like Blake Corum. They're really going to give him a ton of opportunities, but also makes me think of Sean McVay, kind of paraphrasing, but hearing him say things like, we love Blake Corum because he's a great running back. He's similar to Kyren Williams. He can take away some of the workload off him. And then also Sean McVay, let's make him the punt returner. Let's give him some more chances that could potentially risk injury. So I totally agree that, yes, I do think it's going to be a lot of fair catches. Having said that, the injuries that you mentioned that he did deal with, those are injuries that you can suffer non-contact, ones that you don't have to necessarily get hit in a big way to have an injury. And he's dealt with injuries throughout his entire career. His rookie season, he broke his foot. He had an ankle injury. And then last year had a severe ankle injury that placed him on the IR. And it's also pretty clear that Sean McVay wants to use him in spots where he can make some moves and try to help this team as a returner. He said that he wanted to give Kyren another way to give Williams touches to help the team, and that he feels comfortable using Williams on special teams in this fashion because of their confidence in backs Blake Corum and Ronnie Rivers. So, yeah, that tells me right there that they do expect him to at least make some attempts to return the football.
The fair catch thing doesn't add up to me. Why him? If you're not going to have it be Kupp. Kupp's got the best hands on the team. Kupp's the guy that if you're literally
Tyler Johnson,
yeah, there's plenty of options that are not him. If it's just going to be a bunch of fair catches. Let me ask you this too: that once I got over the wait, they're going to do what moment of this? Let me ask you a question. Let me ask Rand, what the hell is Tutu Atwell doing on this team? What purpose does he serve? What role does he fill? That if you're not going to use him in this capacity, if you're not going to use him to return kicks, if you're not going to try to unleash that crazy speed that he does have, what is he doing here? Because they don't throw him the ball very often. And I assume that maybe, this was his last path to be an impactful player on this team was in a special teams capacity. We saw him try it a few years ago, and he wasn't able to do it because he suffered some injuries along the way. But I don't see a road for him to catch a bunch of passes. And if he's not going to return punts, and we'll see whether or not he returns kicks, I really don't see the upside of having him on your team.
Yeah, that's exactly kind of where I'm at too. I mean, when we saw Cooper Kupp do this, like I said, anything inside the 25, that was fair caught. Having said that, McVay does probably expect him to at least have a couple opportunities to return the football and help them and giving them an advantage. But yeah, you mentioned Tutu Atwell. How about Xavier Smith, who doesn't make this team and he doesn't get this chance? And he was someone that had some positive returns in the preseason. And another big takeaway from this, Travis, is McVay showed us nothing in the preseason. It was Houdini McVay once again. We know nothing when it comes to Sean McVay and what he's going to do in the preseason. I mean, you had guys have success in those opportunities that they made, and you still go with a Kyren Williams. And I will say that the Rams fans will absolutely lose their minds. They will absolutely go nuts if he tweaks his ankle, if he has to miss any time, if he doesn't look like the same running back. I mean, I think Blake Corum is going to factor in as well, but still, I mean, we have a running back that's really established himself last season. You want to see more of that and less of this.
I don't get it, D-Mac. I really don't. And
this is a head scratcher.
This is 2 days in a row of just looking at, and again, I'll couch this in some positive light. Sean McVay knows what he's doing. If this were Brandon Staley or some of these other coaches we've seen come through the NFL, it just feels like they're completely over their skis. If this was Dennis Allen or something like that, you would be like, all right, enough of this. This guy doesn't know what he's doing. That's not the case with Sean McVay. Sean McVay is, if he's not the best coach in the NFL, you're not getting past 2 or 3 before you say his name. So benefit of the doubt for sure. But this is one of those where you're dipping into the savings bank of things that we feel the way that we feel about you with Ernest Jones, with Kyren Williams as your punt returner. These are things that if they don't go well, will be looked at as, this was not a hard one to predict going into it. So he's stuck his neck out there a little bit on both of these things.
Absolutely. That's what makes this one tough to stomach, because at the end of the day, I just don't think the reward is as much as the risk. I mean, the risk is just not worth it to put Kyren Williams in those situations. And you did spend a 3rd-round pick on Blake Corum. We know you want to utilize him in a lot of different roles this season. Try to hope that he's another rookie star that you found. And you did mention at the very beginning of this that you do kind of have to trust these guys. And absolutely. I mean, there's no doubt about it. I mean, these guys have proven. I mean, 5 trips to the playoffs in the last 7 years, 2 Super Bowl appearances, 1 Super Bowl win. Yes, they have equity in the fan base, but let's say they didn't have couple of those things, I'd be really pounding on my fist, yelling at the top of my lungs right now because of this move.
I am willing to give the benefit of the doubt. I am willing to listen. I am willing to watch. I am willing to let them decide these things without me just jumping up and down and screaming and banging on the table saying, this is crazy, this is crazy, this is crazy. But you have my full attention. Like this is one of those things that, wait, huh? Okay, but okay, what? Okay. I don't get it. It doesn't mean it won't work. It means I don't get it. And I'd love to turn around, 6 months from now and say, wow, Kyren Williams was an all-pro special teams player. And
that's the thing. He doesn't have breakaway speed.
It doesn't make any sense.
He doesn't have breakaway speed.
At all. I just don't understand it. But in Sean McVay, I trust. So
they're testing us, man. They're testing us right now.
Yeah.
But coming up next, we're going to take a look at this 53-man roster. We had some big takeaways from the Rams 53-man. That's coming up next on Locked On Rams.
You got the Gametime app on your phone yet? What are you waiting for? Put the Gametime app on your phone, because here's what you love, I love. Oh, look, if you're listening to one of these podcasts, you know that you love to go to games. We all love to go to live events, right? And really, sometimes it's a game, sometimes it's a concert. I love to go see some stand-up comedy, but the first thing you need is you need a ticket, right? And this is where Gametime comes in. Gametime puts all of the stuff in your area in one easy app right there, and all the cool stuff that comes along with it. Of course, we're talking about seats, views from the seat. We're talking about the lowest price guarantee. We're talking about event cancellation protection. And the part that I love, when you toggle the feature on, there are no hidden fees, all in pricing when you toggle that feature, so you know exactly what it is you're going to pay, and you don't get to the end of the line and flip it open and say, that's not even close to the price that we were talking about. So put the Gametime app on your phone. Take the guesswork out of buying all of your tickets with Gametime. You download the Gametime app, you create an account, and you use the code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off of your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem the code LOCKEDONNFL, LOCKEDON NFL for $20 off. Download Gametime today. What time is it? Gametime.
And welcome back to Locked On Rams. Thank you for making Locked On Rams your first listen every single weekday. Free and available wherever you get your podcast. Locked On Rams, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Also, a special shout out to those everyday listeners out there watching and listening every single episode of Locked On Rams. Can't tell you how much we thank you guys. And you can join that Everyday Listeners Club too. Listen to 5 episodes, watch 5 episodes a week. Really helps out the pod. So definitely join that club. And also, got some shout outs too. You guys have been dropping those comments all week. And these comments are pretty fire. I have to admit, we got to start reading these comments. I saw a really good one about the conductor and Aaron Donald. Who was it? We got Jacob says, no drama policy. Ernest screwed around and found out. Not showing up to practice this week, creating doubt. Not even Stafford missed when he was working on his extension. So, yeah, definitely keep firing away in the comments down below over on YouTube. And we are Tavon Austin. We are Carson Wentz. We are Darius Williams days away from opening kickoff. And we got the 53-man roster yesterday. And we really have to start at the linebacker position. Might as well start right there, because that's where a lot of people were looking. And yes, you do not see Ernest Jones. He's in Tennessee, was one of the best Rams defenders last season. I mean, outside of Aaron Donald, is the most productive and the most consistent. And Omar Speights, the UDFA, from Oregon State to LSU, they're extremely high on him, but it'll be Christian Roseboom early on that'll get the starting reps. And then also another big takeaway was that undrafted rookie Elias Neal, he was on the roster as the 5th linebacker, really one of the preseason standouts.
Yeah, I know we covered this on our emergency pod yesterday, D-Mac, and obviously people can go back on YouTube and check that out if they didn't get a chance to see it. But the Ernest Jones thing feels to me like one of those things where everybody did not get what they want. Like there's some times where everybody is a winner in a deal. This feels like one of these times where everybody is probably feeling a little bit bad about what happened. Like the YouTube commenter you mentioned, like, he messed around and found out. Yeah, okay, he did. I agree. The Rams don't do messy. They don't do drama. The Rams also don't have their leading tackler from a year ago. The Rams also don't have their green dot guy. The Rams also don't have the guy that was not just by, watching, but because Aaron Donald said so, because Les Snead said so. This was the guy that was going to be the leader of the defense. He's gone 10 days or so before the start of the season. That's bad. There's no way to spin that as any way or other. Yeah, did they hold their ground and they don't do drama? Yeah, okay. But what did you give up to continue that streak? Ernest Jones went from a team that could be pretty good, that could make a run, to a team that's bad. It's bad for him. And by the way, there's no guarantee he gets what he's looking for there either. This was a loss on both sides. I just don't kind of get what they're doing. As far as the roster goes and what they have left, they're going to have bodies. Do any of those guys make you feel like, oh, no, that's going to be okay? You're hoping it's going to be okay. You're crossing your fingers that it's going to be okay. You're hoping maybe by committee you can get something done. You're hoping maybe by, the middle of the season that Omar Speights maybe develops into the guy that he looked like in the preseason. But that's the preseason. Who knows how it translates to the regular part? This just feels like a big miss across the board. And again, not to repeat myself, but this is another one where you're dipping into your savings bank to say, hey, trust me, we know what we're doing. Yeah, we do, and I know you do, but this is a really tough one to wrap your arms around. It just you said it last night on our emergency pod. Are the Rams better today than they were yesterday? And the answer is no.
And I think that a lot of that has to do with Chris Shula, the scheme, what he's trying to build, and just giving him the trust that he can go out there and put together a productive defense that can do enough to keep teams at bay while this offense scores close to 30 points a game and lights up the scoreboard. So we thought this defense was going to be bad last season. They end up being a strength early on while the offense got it going later, but you don't have Aaron Donald. You don't have Ernest Jones. And yes, I get it. Ernest Jones, 5.5 sacks last couple of seasons, not an all-pro, not really a top 5 guy, but still, based on the needs, based on the intangibles, I don't care what anyone says, it was a major blow. But I think the transition here is, were you going to say, Travis?
And now, as you see, he might not be a top 5 guy in the league, but he's a top 1 guy on your team.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, great. Okay. There are better guys out. Not on your team, there aren't.
Yeah.
I mean, okay. Somebody's got to play there. And the reason he led your team in tackles and was the green dot guy and was the leader by Aaron Donald and listening is because he was your best player on defense. Full stop. Yeah. And or at least the best player on your defense at that position. And now he's gone.
And I think that really what it comes down to is you're going to see the nickel. You're going to see the way he deploys safeties as almost a dime linebacker type of role. And I think that's really what it comes down to is they thought, okay, we can get by without Ernest Jones, and that the new tactical side of what Chris Shula is going to bring, and you add that to the fact that they wanted zero locker room drama. They didn't want any type of vibes from this guy. And that was just what it was going to come down to. And you look at the defensive backs, that's an area where they're the opposite of thin. They have tons of depth there. You have 11 total defensive backs on this 53-man roster, and that's one more they had this time last year. And Chris Shula is clearly all in on stockpiling as much secondary depth as you possibly can have. You have the flexibility and the optionality of guys like Quinn Lake and Russ Yeast. So you have options. I mean, you have slot defenders, you have dime linebackers, you can mix things up. But really what it comes down to is you have a secondary heavy 53-man, and that's what they're leaning into.
Yeah, look, they're obviously going to go into this with a let's get to the quarterback. Let's kind of put a lot of emphasis on that, whether it's with Verse and Fisk and Turner and Young, and let's really wreak havoc and put pressure on quarterbacks so they have to make quick decisions under pressure, and let's rely on our secondary to maybe make some plays and maybe not have to cover for a super long time. I think that's the goal of this defense, whether or not they can put it together. That's a lot of youth and a lot of guys that are kind of trying to find their way in this league in the back half of the defense. It should be better. I mean, I think Curl obviously is a nice addition. Tre'Davious White, if he's healthy, is a tremendous addition. Darius Williams is a veteran player in this league. So you got a lot of good players in the back end. But it all starts with pressure up front. So we're going to have to, we haven't seen Verse. We haven't seen Fisk. We haven't looked and see what that looks like at the NFL level. I'm optimistic, but the whole the defense was already a huge question mark without Aaron Donald. Now you don't have Ernest Jones as well. Now you're leaning, who is the guy that sets the tone? Who is the guy that tells everybody to shut up and listen in the huddle? I don't know. We're going to find out here in Detroit in a few days.
That's a really good point. I think that you can't overemphasize this, is even if you had a healthy Ernest Jones, and Ernest Jones was going to be that green dot guy, this defense still was going to rely heavily on their two top picks working out. Yep. If Jared Verse and Braden Fisk aren't the stars that they hope they're going to be, this defense wasn't going to maximize their potential. So they need those guys to be productive. Also, you mentioned Cameron Curl. I think if I had to say whose defense is this right now, I think it's Kobe Turner and it's Cameron Curl's early on. I mean, you heard a lot about his involvement in practice and the role he has. Extremely high on him. And just to kind of recap who we got, because we didn't name the linebackers, you got Christian Roseboom, Troy Reeder, Jacob Hummel, Omar Spates, Elias Neal. So 5 linebackers, 7 cornerbacks, Tre'Davious White, Darius Williams, Quinn Lake, Kobe Durant, Russ Yeast, Josh Wallace, and Charles Woods. And then you have on the IR, Darion Kendrick. And the safety spot, you got Cameron Curl, John Johnson III, Cam Kinchins out of the U, and then Jalen McCullough. So I don't know. I had to include the U, man. They're going to Florida to open up.
Florida has their 2 non-conference games are Florida State and the U. Good luck. That's a big swing.
It's a big week of college football. I mean, if you look at that slate of games, you got UCLA and Hawaii at 4 p.m. Pacific. That's a marquee game on Saturday.
Might be the only game they win.
Coming up next on Locked On Rams, we're going to continue to break down this 53-man roster. That's coming up next on Locked On Rams. And welcome back to Locked On Rams. Thank you for making Locked On Rams your first listen every single weekday. Free and available wherever you get your podcasts. Locked On Rams, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So we're going to break down this 53-man roster in a couple of different episodes. But next big takeaway for me is we talked about a little bit is Xavier Smith. Yeah. And he had a preseason that would have earned a lot of players around this league a spot on a 53-man roster. He had a 4-catch game against the Texans. He had a 34-yard game there and a 23-yard punt return, 16 rushing yards. So he showed some versatility. He showed he could help his team in the special teams. This Rams team doesn't have a ton of burners. He's got that sub 4.4 speed. I thought there was a pretty decent shot that he was going to make this 53-man roster. Towards the end, it became clear he wasn't, but he's not on the 53.
Yeah, I again, and not to make this the why is Tutu Atwell on the show podcast, but I don't understand why you don't try something with Smith that you've tried with Atwell. You've tried Atwell for a few seasons now. It really hasn't hit. You're not going to use him in special teams, or at least not in punt return right there. So why not give Smith a chance? Somebody in the Rams organization must be much higher on Atwell than I think either you or I are. Hopefully it hits. Hopefully all the guys that the Rams have, contribute and have a great impact. But yeah, I was surprised that X didn't make the team. I shouldn't say that I was surprised he didn't make the team. I thought there was a chance he could make the team. And the way that he played, it felt like he was earning an opportunity right there. But like you said, when you see the way that Sean McVay uses the preseason, when you saw him out there the way that you did, you had a pretty good sense that it wasn't going to happen for him.
Yeah. And I think, unless he's elevated from the practice squad, he's not going to take on that role. But still, hey, that's what the preseason's all about. For a guy like that on this team, when they're not showing a ton in the preseason, you really have to explode. And I think it's less about what you do in the games and more about what you do in practice. And Omar Spates is evidence of that. And I think just kind of have to bring up the Ernest Jones thing one more time is, hey, when he capitalized on that knee injury in the sense that when he was out, he got more looks, and they realized they could do it without him. So it really starts and ends with the knee, I think, as far as why he's not on this team this year. But I'm sure we'll have a ton of time to kind of continue to unpack that.
You're right, though, Doug. It's such a great point that if you miss time, they're not going to not practice. They're not going to, Ernest Jones isn't here. Everybody just go home and we'll wait for him to come back and be healthy again. It's like, no, put somebody else out there. And if that somebody else shines and pops and looks good, then you have that, that looks pretty good. Do we have to have? I mean, it's being Wally pipped all over again, and it's just it. I mean, who knows? Omar Speights may go to the Hall of Fame. He may be out of the league in 6 weeks. I have no idea how this is going to play out. Neither does anyone else, if they're being honest. So we will see. But not being out there, not practicing, it's a very, very risky proposition, especially if you're already a little bit of a squeaky wheel as far as wanting a new deal.
No doubt about it. And then another big one for me was the offensive line. The Rams keep 9 offensive linemen. You got Joe Noteboom, Jonah Jackson, Steve Avila, Kevin Dotson, Rob Havenstein, Bo Limmer, Warren McClendon, Logan Bruss, and Connor McDermott. A.J. Jackson, he is suspended for the first 2 games. And then on the IR, they put KT Leviston. So you look at the offensive line, that's definitely thin, especially with the injuries, especially when you consider that Rob Havenstein could miss week 1. If that's what happens, you're probably going to see Warren McClendon Jr. as a starting right tackle and Joe Noteboom as your starting left tackle. So I think one thing to look at as far as what they could do now is, do they add some offensive line depth? And maybe that's not for someone that's going to start, but just maybe a practice squad guy, maybe some depth behind that. But they're a little thin at that position when you look at where it stands right now.
Yeah, I think they are right now. I like how you said that. I think that if you look at it as you sit here on August 28th, it is. But if you get into the middle of September and Havenstein's back and Lark Jackson is back, then all of a sudden it goes from, hey, do we have enough, to we're pretty darn good, assuming those 2 guys are healthy and ready to go when they come back in. And it seems like they both will be at some point during the season. So I'm with you that today it feels like there may be a little bit of a lack of depth right there. That's because 2 depth pieces are already expected to play before the season's even started. But I think by the time we get into the meat of the season, that'll be an issue, assuming that nothing else kind of goes wrong at this point. But I think that's a short-term problem, not a long-term one.
Yeah, and you got 4 tackles, 3 guards, 2 centers, and you got guys that are versatile too. So that's definitely going to play a role as well. But yeah, lots of happening in Rams land. We're continuing to break down this 53-man roster. Got tons of more to dive into with this one, but that's going to do it for today's episode. My name is Doug McCain. You can follow me on X and Instagram at DMAC_LA, and you can follow the People's Champ, Mr. Travis Rogers, at Travis Rogers. And until next time, whose house? It's Locked On Rams house.